My name is Anastasia Kompos, and I am ex-Royal Australian Air Force. And this is number one of this exciting new podcast series, Voice to Heal, Historical Military Abuse Stories. And my guest is Christina McCaig, who is here to break the silence here today for the first time in 30 years plus, which is a very big deal as we take our power back by doing so, because it's time and beyond time that we come together. And Christina, welcome. Thank you for being the very first episode. I'm excited to bring you
Anastasia.
in. You originally said to me this was for you to have your story out for other women who have had similar experiences, so they don't feel on their own, not only in the defence, but for people to heal themselves. It's time to break the secrecy, because you were part of the Royal, I'm going to go straight in, you were part of the Royal Commission into Veteran Suicide, and you had an NDA placed upon you,
Yes.
and and I just want to also add that each time someone voices to heal, past trauma has less of a hold on us. And you said to
Yes,
me, breaking
definitely.
the secrecy,
Yeah.
and this is an insight of what happened to someone else. You're not on your own. Bless. They were the things that you shared with me. And is anything coming? What would you like to share now and introduce yourself um, about
Okay. Well,
breaking
my
the silence?
name is Christina, and I was the first female in a Royal Australian Air Force band, or first musician, paid musician, back in the 80s, where times in defence weren't so healthy for women. Not a good time. And a lot of trauma occurred during that period, which took me 20 to 30 years to start processing. And in that time, because I had an NDA on me after I left, I took the Defence Force through equal opportunities. And part of that process was an NDA, which my understanding was I couldn't even talk about what happened with anyone. So I spent years, raising a family, being a wife, all the rest of it, working, doing
Mm,
life, and having these reactions to things that would happen around me that were just, you know, overboard. I'd lose jobs. I'd have a reaction at work and I'd be out. And unknown to me, I suffered from PTSD from my days in the Air Force. And because I couldn't talk about it, it compounded the trauma. I felt that it didn't happen
100%.
to
I
me,
can
that it happened
actually.
to someone else.
Yes, I can relate to you with that, with what I went through too. So, Christine, I actually don't know, and today we're a little bit different. This podcast is a bit different. We're going with the flow organically. There's been nothing pre-prepared. We are really just going to keep this as natural, like it's you and me talking without other people. That's how I want to do this. And so
Yeah,
I'll be talking over you and we'll be sharing, and it's just going to be just different. I want it to
yeah.
be like that. And I know you love that too. And I just want to say that we've already had a pre chat. And I've learnt from when I was interviewed by Kat Corchado, Sisters in Service, that, and other people, that when we have pre chats, a lot of the golden stuff is in the pre-chat, where I've done something different. I actually don't know your story. We've been talking for a little while. I actually don't know what happened to you. So we're going to dive right in here if you feel comfortable
Mhm.
to share the basics of what actually happened, that what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you went through.
Okay. Well, the unit that I joined had 60 men in it when I joined. And it was very mixed reactions. Some were quite happy about having women there, but in the majority, the feedback that I was getting was that they didn't really want women in the band. Um, it was a lot of the older guys were actually quite cool about it, but a lot of the guys around my age and 20s to 30s, a little bit above that were quite, they weren't unfriendly, but they weren't friendly either. It took quite
And
a
what
long
year
time
are
to
we
actually.
talking about roughly, darling? What year are we talking about again? Remind us.
85.
Yes, see, that's around the time that I joined, and I call it the boys' club. It was very
Yeah,
much.
definitely a boys' club.
Mhm.
And but not only with the boys' club, you have girlfriends and wives there that were threatened by having a woman in the
100%.
band. The
Yeah.
comment I would get is, "You have a smorgasbord." Like, what even is that? Like, just because you're working with 60 men doesn't mean that you are going to, taste them all. So,
They found us
when
as a
I joined,
threat. I can relate to that as
yeah,
well. They found
yeah,
us as a threat. Yes, yes.
yeah. And I can sort of understand the women in a way because, in the military, it's a lot different to Civvy Street. You're off on trips with everyone. So
Mm,
the very
mm,
first trip that we did was to Canberra.
mm,
And I think it was within a couple of weeks of me being in the unit. It wasn't very long into my career there. And yeah, we sat at the boozer in Canberra. It was cold, so there was an open fire, and we just chatted, got to know each
mm,
other. And I thought it was a nice couple of days, getting used to this new job. I
mm.
get home and I get like unleashed on in the accommodation block because one of the guys in the band had rang one of the girls and told him I'd slept with every single man in the band. Now, in 2 nights, I mean, other than the physical logistics of that being impossible, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I was very
Can I
naive,
just
very
interject
protective.
here and say to you that
Yeah,
that also similar happened with me in a section, and I just want to remind everybody that hasn't been in the service, when you're in there, they're your family, they are your friends. Back
yeah,
in the 80s, I I didn't go off base for a long time. They were your family, they were your friends,
yeah.
you were in a bubble. So when that gets said about us as females in a male dominated world, that's a big deal to live with that
It is.
shame. What was it for you? It is horrible, horrible. It's an invasion of privacy. It was just, what was it
Yeah.
for you?
For me, it was um, I guess a loss of trust because you go into
Mm,
this workplace, you don't expect people to behave anything other than professionally,
mm,
and not to mention the feelings of being slut shamed without
oh yeah,
having done anything, and back in the 80s, there was a lot of sexual activity that went on, amongst the ranks and people that lived
yes.
on base. And I was never into that. Like, I joined to be a musician. And so to be tarred with that brush and have people that I thought knew me for 3 months at recruit training to then come back at me and, oh, we thought you were this sweet, innocent young girl and you're nothing but a slut, just absolutely was a slap in the face. And
What a
luckily
shock
I was
and what
able
a
to talk to them
trauma. Yeah.
yeah, and that and another incident was basically my first indication that it wasn't going to be smooth sailing um, as a woman in this unit. So yeah, so it's and from that there was a lot of gaslighting. There was so much I guess correlations even to domestic abuse that you see, with coercive behaviors and things like that. Um, and it was basically like being in a domestic violence situation, but in the workplace,
Can I also add,
and
I
trying
call
to
it like
navigate.
being in a concentration camp. It felt like
Yeah,
when that stuff happened, we couldn't go anywhere. We signed up and we signed the dotted line
yeah,
for life, which a lot of people don't realise. Once we leave, we never really leave. So I just want to
no,
remind people about this as well. With what you just shared, it's really important that we're in this closed environment and there's nowhere to go really. And back then, there was no
no,
equal employment opportunity officers. There was nowhere and nothing and nowhere you could go. So we just went inwards
yeah,
and inwards and inwards.
yeah. Yeah. And, the expectation from the higher ranks was that I acted like a lady at all times. So no swearing or any of that type of
Mm,
stuff. But the guys, I didn't. swearing didn't worry me. I grew
Yeah.
up in a military family, and while my parents didn't swear or do all that,
Yeah. Part of the
I'd been around the
culture.
environment. Yeah,
It is.
and
I
so a
swear
lot
like
of
a
those
trooper.
things,
I own that.
yeah, a lot of those things didn't bother
Yeah.
me. Like,
Yeah.
but for
Yeah.
me, this was a lifetime
Mm.
career choice.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a musician from
Mm-hmm.
primary school, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd, reached, I guess, that goal of being a
Oh,
professional musician, and the walls just came tumbling around me for the whole 7 years that I was there. It was constant fighting,
compounded. It was compounding, was it? It would just keep
compounded,
going
yeah,
and going and
yeah,
going.
yeah. And there was a whole heap of different facets of abuse too. It wasn't just a case of going in and workplace bullying. There was harassment, like, guys wanting to know how big my nipples were. Um, and the hierarchy using their rank to make orders of me, um, for things that, like you just wouldn't do outside. And, in one incident, I'd had teeth removed, and because I was going to get braces, and because I was terrified of dentists, they gave me some Valium before I went to get these two teeth removed. So I'd gone into work. I was a little bit, you know, dopey, and went to the dentist. That was fine. But the removal wasn't straightforward. So the week later, when I went to get the other two out, they gave me more, um, drugs to get their Valium so that I'd be calm to go in. Otherwise, I wouldn't even walk there. And because I couldn't drive, I'd had to go into work before the appointment, and there was no way known I could play or work. I was just so drugged. And the warrant officer asked me to go clean the rehearsal room floor. So full band was on. And I was so bombed out. I went in and I swept the rehearsal room floor, and the commanding officer's looking at me like I've grown an extra head. Um, the guys in the band are just staring at me like I've lost my marbles. And the warrant officer sitting at the back, and he's like, thumbs up, So anyway, I swept it, go out, get the mop and the bucket, and I go back in and I mop. And the commanding officer, he threw down his bat and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Mopping the floor, sir." And he's like, "Well, who told you to do that?" And I said, "The warrant officer, sir." So he goes, "Just get out of here." And the whole band broke out into playing Sadie the Cleaning Lady. So there was a humorous element to it. But
Yeah,
I was
but that
so,
cuts. I'm hearing you, but did
yeah.
that? I'm hearing you say there's a humorous, but was that another little chink thing like that? Did
Oh,
that affect
absolutely.
you?
That was,
Yeah.
yeah, another one of many
I just want to
incidents
pause you
where,
for a minute, darling. I just want to pause you for a
yeah,
minute. When you said about when they wanted to know about your nipples, the breast thing was a big thing. The breast thing, when I went
yes,
to March on Anzac Day, they didn't take me on because I had breasts. So I just wanted to say they were just, I just wanted to add that they just felt they had that right. And when they joked about that, like, everyone was laughing, Sadie the cleaning lady, but that was another bit of pressure
yeah,
that added on
yeah.
top of what you're going through. And what were you going to share, darling?
Yeah, well, yeah, the humiliation of going
Yeah,
in and,
yeah.
doing that in front of the whole band, and,
Oh,
like obeying orders, but being so doped up that I couldn't even advocate for myself and go, "No, actually, there's full band on. Do you mind if I do it during the break?"
mm,
So just doing as I'm told.
yeah.
And yeah, so, there was a lot of incidents like that. Like one of the guys came in complaining because he saw an empty Tampax box in the bin. Like there was nothing in it, that it was just an empty box in the bin, and came through and had a go at me and said, "Don't leave your filth lying around here." You know, it was just,
No idea. No
yeah,
idea.
a lot of silly things like that, like you look at them and you think they're only small things, but when they're added to all the other things,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking about breasts and stuff. When I'd first gone in and I had my ceremonial uniform made for me, because you go to the tailors, they measure you up. They did a female cut. The warrant officer said, "No, you have to be dressed the same as the men with the buttons the same way. So I went back, had to get another one made up, and it just looked like a smock on me. One of the girls that joined after me was, I mean, could have worn a double A bra backwards and it would have fit. But another lady that joined was quite well endowed, and hers looked
Yeah,
like a maternity smock.
yeah.
So we were doing ceremonial parades and concerts representing the Royal Australian Air Force. I looked like a little boy on parade. And, the others, the uniforms um, deliberately not fitting us.
That
Um,
erodes away at one. That
yeah,
just
yeah,
erodes away those little things. I know that when I marched on Anzac Day, being the first female in Australia, um, maybe one of it, to march on Anzac Day with the rifle, there was no female's uniform. I wore men's clothes. So I can relate to
yeah,
what you're saying. Mine was
yeah,
different, but I had to go and
yeah,
get men's clothes because there was no female's uniform. Now, this is in
yeah,
our day and age. This is in our
yeah.
era, and it's time
No.
that we speak up about these things because, Christina, I see and hear a lot of people sharing that not a lot has changed. Yes, there's
Mm,
equal employment opportunity, but that's why we're voicing to heal. That's why we're holding these podcasts
yeah,
because it's time to speak out for people to know they're not the only ones and that it's not okay. These little things
yeah,
do add up.
yeah. And they
They
normalize,
compound.
yeah, poor behavior. And I was speaking to a current serving defence member a while ago, and we touched on things that had happened. And she's like, yeah, that happens all the time, but that's normal. And there was no sense of actually,
It's
this
not
isn't
okay.
right because it's been normalized. So that still does go on. I think things have improved to a certain degree,
Yeah.
but is still a long way to go. And, like this person that I spoke to um, would have, gone on for years having all these little things chipping away, not realizing that, hang on, that's actually not good behavior. We shouldn't be experiencing this type of stuff. So yeah, and it's like talking about breaking the silence. For me, not being able to talk about it and compounding that trauma, especially with
Mm.
undiagnosed PTSD, and then you going through, numerous suicide attempts, um, feeling that there's something wrong with you, but not knowing what there is. You just feel like you're a mental case, and struggling to mask behaviors,
Oh,
struggling
yeah.
not to react when you're out in public.
Oh,
Very,
yeah.
very tiring. um
Oh,
yeah,
exhausting.
and
Mm.
yeah, and the feeling that um it happened to someone else, not to me, the feeling that it was a dream in a way, or a nightmare, that the disassociation with what happened and
To
the
go.
gaslighting,
Mm.
it it makes you doubt yourself. And I remember I used to think, I couldn't tell my story because it's so fantastical, so many different facets of it that people would go, nowhere it can be that bad. You must have made it up. And being told by the warrant officer when I reported an incident of I was stalked pretty much the whole time that I was in there, and it sorry, culminated in a break-in at my unit, and I was attacked. And the guy that was attacking me said, "Shh, I was told you'd be in it." And from that, and the cigarette butts outside my unit, and things that the police said, um, led me to believe that it was actually a setup from people within defence. And the three senior NCOs were all talking about it and had called me over. But they were talking about things that happened in the attack that I hadn't even told the police at that stage. When everything's fresh and you go down the police station, you don't remember everything. The trauma blocks it. So you
Mm.
report what you can, and then over the next few days, more things come to surface. So they were talking about things like knives left on the kitchen bench that, um,
This is
that I hadn't
terrifying.
really,
This
yeah.
is terrifying. I just want to
But
pause you
this
for a.
guy that,
This is terrifying.
Yeah, he
You had someone
broke in.
stalk. Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, yeah, and he took knives out of my kitchen drawers, like the big
Oh,
knives, big sharp knives, put them on the kitchen bench.
yeah.
And like, and while the attack was happening and I was screaming blue murder, they heard me over 2 kilometers away. And he panicked and left. And I remember him putting his hands on the door jambs and telling me to shut up. He touched
Mm,
things in the house, and yet they didn't find one single fingerprint.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, and these guys that were talking about it and the penny dropped it, they were the ones that had organized it. So that whole um, at that time, only a couple of years of stalking was something that had come from the workplace, not just some random
This is horrific.
person off the street.
This is horrific. Is
And
this
and
why
it
you had the
happened.
NDA placed on you?
No, the NDA was placed on me because when I went to Equal Opportunities, I was suffering horrific nightmares. I was waking
From
up my
this and
entire
everything
family.
else, darling? From that
Yeah,
and everything
night
else?
after night. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And I'd been
I'm
out
hearing
about a
you.
year or maybe longer, and the nightmares were getting worse. They weren't getting any better. And so I thought, well, it's obviously unresolved from this period in
Mm,
the Air Force.
mm,
So I rang up Equal Opportunities and put in a complaint with them.
hmm.
And apparently I was the first woman to have done so. So if the Defence Force threw every single top lawyer at me, and all I wanted was an acknowledgement that it had happened and an apology. I didn't want
That
money. I
was
didn't
really
want.
brave. I want to commend you on
Yeah,
your bravery in blazing that new trail. Because I blazed a few new trails, I know what that feels like. We don't realize it at the
yeah,
time. We don't feel brave at the time, but that's a big deal. And then, so when you come forward, did they throw lawyers to give you a hard time? Because that happened to me a little bit too. Were they giving you a hard time or to
yeah.
support you?
I know. Well, I had my own lawyers that I'd
Got it.
appointed. Like there was no
Yep.
support for me in going through that process, other than having my own lawyers. Um, the the responses to the complaints were incredible. One of them, I remember, basically said that um, that I'd failed a psych evaluation before joining, but that they had let me in anyway because the Air Force needed a Nobo player. And I'm like, at the time thinking, hang on, you've just admitted that I wasn't psychologically strong enough to deal with all this, but you just threw me to the wolves. But they were using that as an argument. Well, she wasn't of sound mind, or she wasn't strong
Wow.
enough to be able to
Wow.
withstand that. Therefore, she deserved it. And that was what was coming across from the lawyers. And in the end,
Typical. Yep.
yeah, and it was just, and I was arguing back, like the logic of it just blew me away. And the
It
stalking
compounds the
started back up again.
PTSD, doesn't it? That's another layer.
Yeah,
That's
just,
re-traumatizing.
yeah,
They're good at that.
yeah,
I had a lawyer that re-traumatized me when I came forward and stripped shreds off me.
yeah,
You can't handle the truth, and I got re-traumatized and shut down and shut off. You were brave enough to keep going.
yeah. Well, I ended up,
Well
the
done.
lawyer said to me, look,
Yeah,
you'll get an apology, and they
yeah,
did give me a little bit of money, which basically covered my legal costs and whatever,
yeah.
but it wasn't about the money. But they said to me that if I go further with it, it will end up in the Supreme Court, and I will have
Mhm.
all these lawyers and barristers tearing me down. And at that point, the stalking had started back again. So I was basically just a basket case mess. So
Oh,
I accepted the apology.
yeah.
And as part of that, they said I had to sign an NDA. Um, Reading it now, it basically just says I can't take any further action. But at the time, the way it was explained to me was that I couldn't talk about it or tell anyone. So I can't go to the media, I can't do anything like that. And at the time, that was fine because I thought, um, like I've got what I've wanted. I've got an
Mm,
acknowledgement that it did happen. Whereas the when I was in, I was constantly be told, I was too sensitive. I was making it up. I was
mhm.
imagining it. When the break-in happened, I got called into the office with these three senior NCOs, and like they were complaining about my performance at work, which wasn't good because I was, you know, the
Rest.
first couple of days after someone had broken in and attacked me, and I had bruising all down like the back of my down my face where the guy hit me, and down my chest. And despite that bruising and everything, they said to me, "It didn't happen. You either made it up or you imagined it." So there was
Oh,
no support.
sweetheart.
And then to
Oh,
find out a few days later that they were probably behind it.
mhm.
And even though my experience of them hadn't been good for the whole time that I was in there, it still threw me
Oh, yeah.
that they think I'd made that up, you know. Yeah, and doubted myself. Like I'm like, did I make that up? And so I would do these stupid little games where I'd get into trouble for playing something wrong.
Mhm.
And so I'd go to one of the other girls, okay, how about you go and you play it wrong next time and we'll see what happens.
Mm,
If you get into trouble for it, then I know it's not me, it's just work and that's the end of it and I won't worry about it. If you don't, then I know it's targeted to me. So I was constantly trying to prove to
mm.
myself that
Yes.
this was targeted behavior. And, you know, and then they had an investigation later on before I left, and because we had a new commanding officer, and he basically, when he got wind of the fact that the girls weren't felt that we weren't being treated fairly, he basically told us we didn't know what harassment and bullying and all that was. So he brought in a flight lieutenant to talk to us. So
Yep.
the the three of
I could,
us that were the
yep.
initial girls
Oh,
stayed back
yeah.
and told her about the stalking because the others were experiencing stalking as well, told her the behaviors that were going on beyond what the newer girls were complaining about. And so the result of that was there was an investigation and people were being taken out and questioned, putting in statements. And that whole thing went on for weeks and then nothing. It just stopped.
So
And
no
one
result,
of the
no nothing from
sergeants,
that?
no, nothing. And one of the sergeants, stopped me in the hallway and he said, or I think it might have been a flight sergeant at the time, I can't
Mm,
remember,
mm,
but he
mm.
said to me, oh, the investigation's over. They found that you were at fault. It was nothing to do with us. You were the problem.
Oh,
So
oh, I just want to take a
I went
minute.
home. Yeah,
Yep, you go. I just want you to take a
went
breath.
home.
This is massive. You went home. Yep.
Yeah, spoke to my dad. He
Oh,
rang somebody because he's ex-Royal Air Force. He rang somebody and talked to them, and they
oh.
said, yes, the investigation's over. There were over 50 charges to be laid. If we laid those charges, it would be the closure of RAF Central Band. So nothing's going. Yeah, so they
Okay.
basically just dropped it. End of story. So
Let me
that
just take a
was
breath
that.
with that. Just let me take a breath with
Yeah.
that. That was a lot. That was a
Yes.
lot to
And I was
share.
blamed for everything.
Yeah. I'm just feeling for you, and the anger that would come with that is just, and the fact that you kept your sanity. You would have doubted your sanity. You know, on what grounds did you leave? On what grounds? What
Um,
was your leaving like? Because everything you
leaving was
just said
awful.
then is huge. It's there is so much in what you just shared, darling. That is just
Yeah.
not even breaking it down, just hearing all that. There is so much in that. What was your leaving like? What then after that? Then what led to you? Did you medically discharge? Did you discharge?
No,
How did you discharge? What happened there?
I would. I was forced out.
Of
We'd had
course.
a um, we had a ceremony every year called Beating the Retreat. So we go on with some of the guys would play piccolos. We
Yeah,
had the red and the blue uniforms of
yeah.
colonial um,
I love beating
people
the retreats.
with
I used to love them. Yeah,
yeah,
before I
and
joined.
the
Yeah,
cannons, live
yeah,
cannons,
that's
and
it.
we'd get on the stage and we'd play the 1812 overture.
Oh
And
wow.
the guy that played first oboe was off doing something else So I was playing first oboe, and
Mm.
there's a little solo, like 2-bar solo. It's not very long in
Yeah.
the 1812 overture, like da 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 dum. And just as I was about to breathe in and play it, the flight sergeant next to me, who was one of the worst offenders, leaned over and said to me, "Play it plaintively, not painfully," and threw me off, and I stuffed it up. So, and I actually had had enough by this stage.
Mm.
So he cautioned me after, like, that I'd stuffed it up, and that, all the usual things. You're not good enough for the band, shouldn't be here. And I said to him to go and get fucked. So he's like, "What did you say?" So I said it again. And he wanted me to repeat it to the sergeant behind me. And I went, "Well, no, because you heard me the first time." So he walked off, and
That
the
is
warrant
a
officer
big
came
deal.
through.
That's fucking
Yeah.
massive. That is, you didn't do that back. That's unheard of.
You
Like,
didn't know. That's
no,
insubordination, you
wow,
know?
that's like a sin. You did that. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, then what happened?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the warrant officer came past me, and he was carrying a huge big amplifier, and he dropped it on my oboe. And like, I can't say if it was deliberate or not, but based on
Yeah,
the behaviours that I'd been subjected to, I'd say deliberate. It was my
yeah.
own instrument. They had never provided me with a defence instrument. I had to use my own student model instrument the whole time that I was in there, other than when it broke and they sent it off for repairs. Every time I said, "Have you got getting an oboe for me?" they'd be like, "No." Um,
And the others,
and
what did
so
others? Did
after,
others have instruments that was provided, or were you
yeah,
the
they were
only
all
one?
provided. Alto sax was
Oh,
provided. And when I was going through Dart, I said to the guy that I spoke to in
and
the
what's
meeting
that?
I
When you
had,
went
was
to where?
Dart Defence Abuse Response Task Force,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a like a reconciliation type meeting where you spoke to a
Mm-hmm.
person from Defence, and I said to him, like, you wouldn't send people to war with their own guns or rifles.
Yeah,
But I was
slingshot.
expected to do my job, play
Yeah.
professionally with a student instrument. And anyway, so this guy had dropped that on it, and so that just compounded, my
Mm.
mood. And I went into the building, and I got pulled over by the warrant officer, and he apologized for dropping the
Okay.
amplifier on my oboe. It was an accident, blah blah blah. And I went, "Okay, sir, no worries." And he said, "And you're going to be charged with insubordination for what you told this flight sergeant." And I said, "Yep." I was actually prepared to wear the charge. I was insubordinate, and I didn't care about being charged.
Mm.
So anyway, I was handed a blank charge sheet. So what's the first thing they teach you at recruit training? Do not accept a blank charge sheet. And they told me that they'd appointed a defending officer for me. And I knew enough to know that was also not within the rules. And I said, "No, I want to choose my own." And they said, "No, you have to have this person." I went, "Okay." So I rang legal. They gave me the name and phone number of a lady that was a reservist. I think
Mm.
wing commander or something. I can't remember. Anyway, I rang and spoke to her. She goes, "Absolutely, I will defend you. I need you to go back to your unit, tell them that you've appointed me as your defending officer, and that you are going to be counter pressing a complaint for harassment." I said, "Okay." So I went back in, and they said to me, "You can't do that." I went, "Well, I can, and I have." And they said, "Well, you know what this means? You have taken it outside of the unit, because what happens in the unit stays in the unit." And I'm like, "Right,
Yeah.
this is how I want to proceed with it." So I
This
get
is all
called into
during
the
like you
adminos
getting
office.
towards your discharge, is it? This is all the
Yeah,
wind down. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I get called into the adminos office. He
yeah.
basically said to me that the flight sergeant had dropped the charges out of the goodness of his own heart because my
Bless
parents were
him.
divorcing, and I was upset about that, which I wasn't. I was 25, like, um,
Okay.
that was their business, not mine. So, and then I was told I was going to be trade tested, and that would probably fail. And depending on how I behaved through this whole process, would be the difference whether I just get out or dishonourable discharge. Now, they'd threatened me with dishonourable
Oh
discharge
my
for years,
goodness.
and
I
that I
don't
would
have
never get a job
words.
outside.
I don't
Yeah.
have words. You have been through 7 years, was it?
Yep. Oh, this
Of,
was coming up, please, 6 years at this
yeah,
point.
but just 7 years of hell. You just, did you have
Yeah,
any nice memories? Was there some nice times in there?
absolutely.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. But you just
Yeah,
to have that constantly chipping it away at you and chipping away and
yeah,
chipping away, is, I'm sorry that you had so many experiences
yeah,
non-stop during your time. But you so what happened with the discharge? You have blazed a new trail for women in what you did, and I want to honour you for that. It's
thank you.
not enough is given. Like, it's just, people don't realize it is a big deal to be the first, because I know this has affected the rest of your life. I know what happened to
Yeah,
me has affected my whole life till the day I die. And we've just
yeah,
learned how to self-manage and to cope and to do our therapies and do whatever help we need. But this
yeah,
affects you for life. I know this has
it
still
does.
affected you for life. Yes. So
Oh,
what happened?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll be there forever,
Yeah.
unless I get dementia and suffer memory loss. That might actually be nice. But
so,
yeah,
so what happened
it's
with that
and
discharge, darling? What happened with the discharge?
so they we did the trade test, and
Yeah.
I'd had like my oboe teacher who I was seeing was a very reputable oboist. He didn't think I'd have any problems passing. I'd gone to the
Mm,
Defence School of Music for a month, done a mock trade test there. They told me I wouldn't have any problems passing. I
mm,
went and I played. I felt that I played well, and they failed me. So then we looked at remustering options as uh,
mm,
and in education. I did a couple of weeks work experience in education. I went and did a couple of weeks as a nurse in the 6th RAF, but the Defence had only just taken the nursing training out of Defence. And you basically join qualified. There's no more on the job training. So I
mm.
just missed out on doing that. And while I enjoyed both different types of roles, like they weren't for me.
Yeah,
And I wanted to stay in. This was my dream career. It wasn't
I
something I'm
understand
like,
that. That was
I've had
my
enough. You're
dream
treating me like
thing.
shit. I'm out.
It was
Yeah,
your life. It was your life, and that's what
yeah,
hit so hard. And you said that before, and I didn't say it then. I want to say it now. I also understand what that feels like. It was your life. It was your career, and it was taken off you. You didn't have
yeah.
a choice. That
I didn't
cuts
have a choice.
deep.
Yeah,
It took me nearly 30 years to stop having nightmares and to accept that. That's how long it
yeah,
took me. That's how long it's taken me.
absolutely.
It hits
Yeah,
hard, doesn't it? It takes a
yeah,
long
yeah,
time. It's taken you 30 years. It's taken me 33 years to start being confident enough to speak about it. Um, yeah, I just wanted to add that. I just want to let people know that it's just when you go in, it just cuts so deep. So what
yeah,
happened? What happened? The injustice, and not having a say, the
absolutely.
continual ganging up on
Yeah,
and being picked on, and it builds up, and the anger inside. Oh my goodness! Let alone the depression that comes with that. So
yeah.
the PTSD. So what happened with that? When you worked out with the musterings that they weren't for you, what did you arrive to then? What happened then?
Um, I'd actually started seeing a guy, and um, I don't know whether it was because by this time, saying no for a lot of things was not really an option for me. And
Mm,
I'd learned to be, I guess, submissive and stuff like that. And this guy, he wanted to get married, but like I was Catholic and I was quite into religion at the time,
mhm,
and I'd wanted to wait until we got married before we had
mhm,
sex and stuff, but he
mhm.
wouldn't take no for an answer.
Good.
And so I can't, like, it wasn't a rape in terms of,
Thank you for sharing that too,
like
by
being forced or anything. I just didn't
however,
have the
I'm hearing
confidence
what
to
you're
say no.
saying.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I've been in
It's just easier to
situations
say
like that.
yes
It's hard to
because,
explain, isn't it? But yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Mm,
yeah. Well, and I'd had the experience of this one flight sergeant. He'd coerced me early on. He
mm,
acted like he was my friend, that he was looking after me. and he wore away at me, and basically we started a sexual relationship.
Mm.
He would say things like, if you weren't with me or weren't, doing this, then it would be a lot worse for you at work. I am protecting you. I am stopping the bullying from
Okay,
being worse. I'm
okay,
stopping the other
okay.
guys from assaulting
Mm.
you. Um, and at that time, like, I had a lot of guilt about that because the guy was married, and
That would have went
like, in
against
hindsight,
your
he was twice
beliefs
my
too.
age.
Yeah.
He was twice my age and a high rank, and when I didn't even tell my husband about this. Like, I told nobody, even
And here
through
you
the
are
whole
telling
processes.
everybody.
Yeah. Um, because
Yeah.
actually a boyfriend, long after I was divorced, I was going through the DART process, and he was
Mm,
getting a little bit frustrated because he felt like it was consuming my whole life. But this
mm.
was something I was finally now able to start exploring and coming to terms with, um, and that it
Through
actually
the
happened
dark
to me. So,
process.
yeah, and
Is this
start
when, sorry,
believing
sorry to
myself.
interject. Was this when you were
Yeah,
leaving, you did that? Because that wasn't around. I don't fully understand.
no, this
That
was
wasn't
about
around. I
12
just
years
got
ago.
booted out, nothing for a
Yeah,
year, like it was
same. I
just
had
different.
nothing for years,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely nothing.
Hmm.
It was, and I was so disassociated from what had happened that I
Yeah.
even doubted that I'd been in the the Air Force. I thought I'd made up joining. I thought I'd
Wow.
imagined
Bit
the whole thing.
delusional, bit detached and a bit
Yeah,
deluded. I understand that very much.
yeah,
Part of the trauma. Yeah.
yeah, and not wanting to think about what happened because,
Mm.
like, I stopped playing, and for me to hear classical music or hear any form of music,
Pain.
and the only time I'd listen to music was when I was suicidal
Yeah.
because I'd want to die
Pain. Yeah.
to music I loved.
Oh, darling.
So,
That's a big deal. It's cutting
just give
off
me a
your
second.
voice. You're right. Take your
Yeah,
time.
sorry. Yeah, no, it's
Take
okay.
no, don't no,
Um,
no. Take a moment, please. Just
yeah,
take a moment with that. We're not rushing past that. Let's just take a moment with that because that's cutting off your voice. If you're a
yeah,
musician and you're born with the music, like I love music, but I wasn't in the
yeah,
band. But if I don't hear it, it's your life force. And to have that
yeah,
taken away from you, sweetie.
yeah. A huge part of my identity was gone.
Yeah,
Um, so,
that's
and that was, yeah,
yeah.
and you can compartmentalize it
Mm-hmm,
and go, especially when you have a young family and you're busy, life just goes
mm-hmm,
on. But yeah, so during that process with the dart, and I explained to this guy that I was seeing, um, and he couldn't see the enormity of it, of how it had
no.
affected me. And so I told him about this guy and what had happened. And he said to me, he said, that was not consensual sex.
Mm,
You were raped
mm,
constantly
mm.
because this guy used his power, his rank,
Yep.
and his age and experience to um, do what he basically wanted with me. And
How did you feel when he
when
told you that? Was it a shock?
huge release, even now saying that, I can feel the release because
Hmm.
I blamed myself for every single thing that happened. I was the one that was at fault. And that was behind a lot of the suicide
Oh, darling, I'm
attempts and the
feeling you.
suicide ideation was
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm the problem. And therefore, if I'm the problem, everyone is better off without me. It's not just about getting rid of the emotional pain that you're feeling or getting it to stop. It's removing a problem from the world, you know. Yeah. So for him to have, sorry, I got to fly. For him to have said
Mm,
that, it changed everything.
hmm, hmm.
And so
It's a
I
validation
think
and a
that was,
release, a validation and a release of what
yes,
happened to you that somebody took your side and said, hey, listen, this is what happened.
yeah.
What a welcome relief for you that's wonderful that
Yeah.
happened.
And to be able to say the worst thing that happened to me, um, was this, not even the break-in and the sexual assault or anything like that,
Mm,
or the stalking,
mm,
this in itself. And I didn't realize how much it had affected me.
mm.
So yeah, to have that validated, like you said,
Ah,
um, and to finally, think, well, maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe um, it wasn't all me.
and what
So,
happened from there, Dallin? What happened from there?
so um, yeah, so I mean, going back into the discharge thing. So with this guy, because I hadn't been able to say no, I
Yeah,
felt pregnant. So
yep,
they took me out of the band. They put me in the library. I
yep.
because I had morning sickness, and I got a certificate from medical, and it said that I was not fit for public representation. And so they decided that meant I couldn't perform with the band or couldn't play with the band. They put me in the library.
Okay.
Um, Went on maternity leave. The commanding officer accused me of doing it on purpose to avoid the trade testing. He was really quite
It just
unhappy
didn't
about it.
friggin'
Made me
stop,
sign
did
a piece
it?
of paper
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
that I would get out, that I would discharge. And I wanted to keep practicing during maternity leave and
Yeah.
redo the trade test again because you were allowed to, if you failed a trade test, you're allowed to go do it again,
Mm.
just to make sure. And he's like, well, you're only going to fail. You're wasting your time. You won't get time to practice when you're, home with a baby. Very old fashioned attitudes. You can't be in
Yeah.
the band if you've got a baby because, you can't go away for 2 weeks and leave it. And I'm like, watch me. But yeah, it
That
was,
was the old
it
rules
just
that when
basically,
women got pregnant or married, they had to get out. So, when
yeah,
we
well, this
joined, that
was,
was only 10 years after that. That was pretty fresh,
yeah.
those rules, wasn't it?
Yeah, and there wasn't
Yeah.
even a maternity uniform. I had to have a smock made up. But so I went
Oh,
on maternity leave,
yeah.
enjoyed life with, a new baby and he, took up everything. But every time I tried to play, I just break down and I couldn't do it. So when I went back, I put in my discharge. Um, so because by that time, I think also being out for a year and not having that constant pressure. Um, and I just gave up fighting.
Yeah.
I'd had enough of the
Enough was
fight
enough.
and I
Well,
just got out.
how much can a koala bear, as we say in Australia?
Is
Like,
exactly right. Yeah.
mm,
The reality was I couldn't fight it. It didn't matter what I could have played like Heinz Holliger or one of
mm,
the most famous oboists and they still would have got me out.
yeah. It's good
So
that you can see that and that you're saying that and that,
yeah.
all these years later, this is massive. This is massive. And
Mm.
again, I just want to thank you for sharing. Did you want to share something else?
No, I think that's yeah.
Just in that moment, I
I
just
mean
wanted to know
that's
if you wanted to finish
yeah,
something off then.
yeah. No, I think that was it. Like I got out, and a year later, or so much like later, I went through equal opportunities. The stalking
Mhm.
started up again, which
After
straight
you, hang
away
on, after you
put
got out or when you were in?
after I got out. When I took the ban through equal opportunities,
Yes.
and they contacted the Defence Force with my complaint, and then they
Yep.
went and spoke to people in the band, and they had these. The letters that came back from the band, from the commanding officer, and all these things, which was pretty much a character assassination.
Mm.
Um, and I think when the band itself, or the people in the band, were made aware that I was doing this, whoever had organised the stalking started it up again, probably to try and scare me into not
Mm.
proceeding. It was just part of that control thing. We'll scare her, and
Yep.
keep me in a state of fear that I can't do anything. And you know I got the apology and I got from the chief of Defence Force. So, and I thought that would be fine, that would be it, and that I would move on because it had been acknowledged, and that
Yep.
was huge. Um,
Very.
but I didn't realize at that time that I was undiagnosed with the PTSD.
Mm.
So, even though I went on to have three more kids, like I got married, had three more kids,
Just
I
because you have
still continued to
PTSD
have
doesn't mean you can't
nightmares.
have kids. Doesn't mean you can't have
No,
kids
I
and you've
know,
got PTSD. Yeah,
but you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like I just got
I
on
do.
with life and, you
Yes,
know, um, and suffered the effects of PTSD with the kids. And I think in a lot of ways, they probably made it a lot better because if I'm on my own and I see cigarette butts, even today, you know, I will go hyper
yeah,
awareness, you know, like
triggers.
if I lived on a house on the front street and somebody flicked a cigarette butt at my house as they walked past and I saw it, I would straight away, I freak. You know, I've stopped freaking on a nuclear scale,
Yeah,
but you know, it's internal.
yeah,
And yeah, and then I'll spend the next few nights being really jumpy and I'll start having nightmares again. And
yes,
although I'd say they're more bad dreams now than they are the full on
yeah,
nightmares,
yeah.
they stopped about 8, probably 8 years ago, actually, the nightmares stopped. And that was a funny thing. Um, when I first left, the nightmares were being chased by men in like ninja black
Yeah,
suits. My house was falling down, my teeth were falling out, all the usual things that you
yeah.
get in a nightmare. But these guys would spend all night chasing me with guns to kill me. And this went on like night after night after night. And I'd wake up the whole family. And eventually they sort of morphed and they'd be movie length. And I'd be in a burning city where dinosaurs were trying to kill all the people. And I'd be hiding in between, you know, slabs of concrete and the dinosaurs would be trying to get me, a lot of fire. And I
My
used to think, that's
dreams.
weird.
Yeah,
Why? Why have
yeah,
they gone
yeah.
like that? I could never work it out. And then I was driving to Dubbo, and so you know when you're driving and you've got nothing to do but think,
Yes.
and again the question of like 30 years later, and I'm still thinking, why am I dreaming of dinosaurs or lions or something that's
Yeah.
trying to kill me?
Yeah.
And then the voice popped into my head, and it went, because they're predators.
Boom.
And
More. You changed.
again,
Got
one
it.
of those feelings of instant relief, like I can feel it now coming down on me, of course, my brain is trying to make sense of what is going on by telling me constantly over the years and me not getting the message that it wasn't me. These men were predators. And yeah, and the nightmare stopped like that. So, you
Beautiful.
know, good old subconscious for,
Well, what were we talking about? The 30 years. What was the 30 years we were talking about that it takes 30 years?
yeah,
Yeah, what was that?
for your brain to turn around and go, okay, I have protected you from this trauma
Hmm.
for this long, even though it's protected you in ways that probably weren't helpful. Um, now's time for you to deal with it. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, from what I've been reading lately, is that's also triggered at a certain time of our lives as women by menopause. So the drop in like the chemical
Mm,
hormone balance kickstarts the brain into going, okay, this is what we're going to do now. And that's why you have so many people, rape victims, sexual assaults, domestic violence, have got out of it, you know, and they get on with their life 20 years later, 30 years later, all of a sudden, we're having to
mm.
deal with all of it. And for those of us around us, it's confusing because they're like, but that happened 20, 30 years ago. Why are you
Yeah.
talking about it now?
Yeah.
You know, why
Yeah.
are you so focused on it now? And it's because now I
Yeah.
am taking control of it and now I am
Yes.
learning about what happened.
Yes.
Um,
Now I'm taking
and
my power back by speaking
yeah,
and voicing.
yeah,
This is the first podcast in Australia, and I have to say this. I come from a heart base. This is purely about supporting veterans, and this is the first podcast in Australia, apparently, in us speaking here today. This is the first
wow,
of its kind.
that's huge. Well
Yes.
done.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
because
that
I
is
had to
really
ask
good.
about legal stuff. Yeah, it is a
Yeah,
big deal. Yet not because we just carry on. This is what we do. But however, others see it like that. So I just wanted to voice and say that. I also, because we're going to wind up
mhm,
slowly here now, but I also want to say the 30 years when you told me that with my TBI and functional neurological disorder, diagnosis just recently from 33 years ago, and the way that it was put to me is when my abuse and assault happened is because we're in the military, soldier on, carry on, you can
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
My brain suppressed the trauma, exactly what you're
Yeah.
saying, and as my neurologist said, it was like a helmet was put over me that after
Yeah.
30 years it comes off and the FND and the
Yes.
TBI comes up to be dealt with. So when you told me that, I'm like, wow, look at that. That is
Yeah.
proof. And to be able to speak here now is I never thought we would be
Yeah.
speaking. And
Yeah.
I just want to add to that 30 years that you
Yeah.
said,
No.
100%, yes.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to add to that is once
Mhm.
I'd gone through the DART process and I was, I guess, got to know more people in the veteran community, because for me, there was no veteran community until I went through DART. And then on Facebook, I started adding people, and
Mm.
um, absolutely terrifying. What if they find me? What if I remind them I exist and they come after me again and all that?
Oh, very
But
valid. That's
one of the,
very valid.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the guys that I met, or virtually, I've spoken on the phone, I haven't met him face to face, and he asked if I could talk to some female veterans that he knew. Like, it happened, like there was about four or five of them over a year or so, and they'd go to him and they'd only just disclosed their trauma. So they were basket cases, absolute messes. So you say, yeah, this person's suicidal. Can you talk to them, please? And the thing I learned from that was when each one that I spoke to, they blamed themselves. They were suicidal because, the big feelings and the guilt and the blaming yourself and everything else, and not feeling normal. Every single one of them is, I'm not normal. I don't feel normal. And I'd say to them, well, actually, you are normal. You are normal for somebody who has been through a traumatic
Mm.
event.
Mm.
So it might not be society's normal, but you completely are normal. There's hundreds of us all in the same
Well,
position,
thank
and
you.
we're normal for us.
Yes, I want to
And
thank you for
and
doing what you were doing with those women, darling, and everything that you've done. I
yeah,
really want to honor you and thank you.
yeah, thank you. And each one of them, when I got off the phone to them, they were no longer feeling that they wanted to go and kill themselves. And I would tell, and my favorite phrase is, which I learned from the Royal Fire Service, is that what you're experiencing is, or going through, is a perfectly natural response
Mhm.
to a perfectly unnatural experience. Um, so, and
That's your message. That's
that,
message to anyone that's listening
yeah,
right now is
yeah,
that.
and that's where we're
Mm.
breaking the silence, not just by
Yes.
talking about it like we are
Hmm.
now,
Hmm.
but when people disclose and start to come to terms or start talking about their trauma,
Hmm.
it's the silence that has kept them trapped in that trauma. It's
Yes.
internalizing it. It's
Yes.
not reaching out to anyone else. Um,
Yes.
and it's
And now
just as
we.
hard to
Mhm.
reach out to other people, because, I mean, I could quite easily now go, you know what, I've dealt with this. It's in my past. I'm going to get on with my life and have nothing to do with the veteran community or anything like that, because I've grown past that. But, I choose not to. So when I would do something like this, or I talk to somebody, and I'm just become qualified as an advocate, and every single woman that I've interviewed during my training process, even as part when I was working with a mentor, when they say they were in the 80s and 90s, all I
Mm.
have to say is, and those years were not kind to women, were they? And immediately I get an emotional response from them.
Yeah.
And that gives me an emotional response. But, like if I go,
What a
okay, I'm
healing.
done now, and
What a
walk away
healing
from it all.
between. What a healing
Yeah.
between you and them by them just you just saying that can open
Mm,
the process, open the door, begin the process.
yeah. And I don't push it any further than that. If
No,
they
no.
talk about it, they do. If they
Yep.
don't want
Yep.
to, I've just
I
validated their
understand.
experience for them
Yeah.
to then take that away and do what they need to do with it. And I know plenty of women who still internalize and refuse to talk about what happened. And that's just the way they deal.
Yeah.
Um, But I think, you know, working with other veterans and um, talking about this stuff is bringing it all out of secrecy, and we are able to help each other and heal. So
Breaking the secrecy.
that's,
You're showing
yeah,
there is a way through.
yeah. And that being silent and keeping it to yourself,
Mm.
not only is it not good for us mentally,
Mhm.
psychologically, it's also not good for the
Physically.
big picture, because
Hmm.
defence will never be held accountable while we
Mm.
are all being silent. So it's
100%.
our voices that are
Yep.
forcing the change.
Yep.
So
Well done, because you were part of the Royal Commission of the Veteran Suicide anyway, as
yeah,
well. So thank you
yep,
again for being brave enough and turning that experience now after all these years into something, you brothers and sisters in arms in helping each
yeah,
other, and it's time. And I just want to thank you for today. And I know that when you watch this back, this will move you even more when you listen and watch
yeah,
this back. I know it can be life changing. I know you've done a lot
yeah,
already, but I can
mm,
see your face is,
yeah,
what are you feeling right
yeah.
now?
Well, I'm back playing music now, so um,
Yay!
that's one thing this whole journey has done.
Yeah.
Defence gave me an oboe, and
Really?
I yeah,
You got it. You
yeah, and I
finally, 30 years later, you got your oboe.
yeah, it was like a really old Navy one. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I played it when mine was off for repairs, but I
Whatever.
basically sold it and put the money towards top professional instrument, got the instrument of
Yep.
my dreams,
Yep.
and I am playing every day, you know,
Oh,
literally. So, and I'm playing solos with organizations that are asking me to come along and do the most beautiful solos and things. And yeah,
it's your time
so
to fly
it's
and shine.
yeah, yeah, it's good having my soul back.
Wow, that's a
So
pretty big
I
thing to
didn't
say.
realize how much I needed music.
Mm.
Um, and it was hard work, huge hard work. And I've been really lucky to have excellent friends support me through that process of, getting back into playing, dealing with my meltdowns. If I did something wrong, played something wrong, and, the
Yeah.
voices that used to tell me I was crap are now my voice.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's
yeah,
wonderful to
yeah.
hear.
So yeah, I've reclaimed that part of my life. So
Wow.
and
And
really
what's your
enjoying it.
message? What's your message? What's your one what is your one message you would say to somebody that's been through something? What is your one message?
Don't keep it to yourself. Find someone you can talk to about it. Start the healing journey, and you'll be amazed where life can take you.
Mm, well done. Thank you for blazing and breaking through. And if anyone sees this and they feel really strongly, I have six. I think we've got half a year's worth full already. So people have felt quite strongly themselves, like you. You just knew that you wanted
Mm,
to do this, and again, I thank you and honour you for going through everything you did. And it's time to bloom and blossom and fly a bit more free and continue to play that beautiful music and be honoured for what you've gone through. I personally thank you.
and thank you for the opportunity to do this. It's been interesting and very enjoyable. So thank you.
Oh, that's
And good
nice to
luck with
hear.
all the other podcasts to come.
Well, we've come too far not to be real, to speak
Yeah,
up now, and it really is time, and to have fun along the way now. We deserve, if anything, to have some fun and joy. And as you said, you got your soul back with your music. That just said it all. That was what a
yeah,
beautiful thing to say, darling.
yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Christina. Oh, thank you too. And I look forward to more episodes from here. So I will leave everybody now, and thank you for those who are listening and joining. Thank you again, Christina, and we'll be talking again soon in the background together, because it's wonderful meeting you. It's wonderful to get back into that connection with that military energy. I've haven't, when I connected with you, it had been a very long time since I was able to, and I've really enjoyed talking and communicating with you because it's so easy, because we get it, we remember,
Yeah,
we know what it's like,
yeah.
there's no false, we've been through so much, we're so real with this, and it's just a blessing to be here, and we're just going onwards further from here with others that are going to speak from
Mm.
here. So thank you, everybody. Bless, cheers, and I will sign this off for episode 1. Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. And this will be
Thanks, Anastasia.
shared soon. All right, darling. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Bye.